I heard what Spice was planning to do. And maybe it's what's in a name. Maybe it's what's in a name. That's what I thought. Because I honestly think somebody like her, in other words, let's not fool ourselves. What's happening in the schools? Not pretty. The schools are hiding it. The Ministry of Education is hiding it. And so that unless a teacher comes to you and say, we are scared. A teacher, listen, I've had a teacher say to me, my school is a war house. Let me just say it.
Yeah.
I've had a teacher saying to me, my school is literally housing gangs. I've had teachers say to me, aren't you concerned about what's happening? Why are you not talking more about what's happening in the schools? Because the situation is really bad. Who's going to reach these children? Who's going to reach these children?
It has to be somebody of influence, somebody that they will listen to.
That's what I'm thinking.
And who
That's
better
what I'm
than
thinking.
who better than persons who they have respect for, like
that's what I'm thinking.
The artists. And so.
That's what I'm thinking. There are many ways to look at it, and I know why there was a knee-jerk reaction from the church. I know why the first reaction is, no, not you. But if not you, who?
There you go.
Because the situation that exists in the schools require a Spice to come and say, listen to me, I have a job. My job is an artist. And we'll put that one side there, so. But let me talk to you now as a mother, a sister, somebody who has been through the ringer. We're going through and we're trying to get through what it is. One of those mornings. Thank you so much for overnotes and messages that you've sent in and you're sending in. We are Nana Velma Pollard. Lots to get through, lots happening, not just on the island, but globally. A whole lot happening. We're seeing not just an AI arms race, we're seeing a trade war, and we're seeing the next phase of the Great Reset well underway. We're not shocked by it or surprised. The only surprise, if any, is those of us in the Caribbean, in the region, Latin America and the Caribbean, and the continent of Africa, the African diaspora, generally speaking, who are so dependent and have become so dependent on aid and on others to pay our way. And that's outside of the reparations argument. We'll come back to that another time. The only surprise is that we are not prepared for what is unfolding, but we have always known that this is where we were heading. For me, the most important thing is food security and water security. And once we've got that locked in, then everything else is secondary. The problem, though, is that we are woefully unprepared. We're in such a bad way that we must be frightened. We must be afraid, very afraid. And as we're waking up this morning hearing that the United States has slapped tariffs on Mexico and Canada and to a lesser extent China, and that Canada has already retaliated with its own tariffs, and it's descending into something that, if it continues along that trajectory, is going to be catastrophic for Canada, for the US too. But then you have to ask yourself, who benefits from these tariffs being slapped, that the US is slapping on Canada, Mexico, and to a much lesser extent, China? For us deep thinkers, we see the play, we understand the play, and we can talk about it another time. But ask yourself, who benefits? what are tariffs? Do we understand tariffs? Do we understand what it means when we have the 25% tariff being slapped on Mexico and China, Mexico and Canada, and Canada slapping back with 25, and the provinces slapping back with their own tariffs on liquor and ban on liquor from red states? That's a whole trade war happening there that can only benefit China. There's a whole war happening there that can only benefit China. Same thing for Mexico. And if you look, Canada, the Canada has been really strident under Trudeau at slapping all kinds of sanctions on Russia. But I want you, look at the globe. Don't look at the map now. Look at the globe, because we normally tell you to go look at your map. But even if you're going into your atlas or you're going online to go check it, look for the globe, and look at where Canada and America are on the globe, and then look at where Russia is on the globe. And remember, saying I have to go all the way around to find Russia. Remember, you just need to go across the Bering Strait, and we're good. But Canada has been very strident in its sanctions against Russia, because, Trudeau seems, it's very similar to what we see coming from France, for example. But the whole apple cart is overturned now, because even France is suggesting now that, or intimating that they're going to go defend Greenland on behalf of Denmark. So that's a whole other thing happening over there. So the whole thing as we know it is in chaos. It is chaotic. It is deliberately chaotic. There's a reason for that. It's not organic. This is planned. This is what's happening was meant to happen. This is how it is supposed to happen, and it is happening as it should. But what I find interesting is that with all these tariffs on and sanctions that Canada has slapped on Russia, that it would appear to me as if Canada is now going to have to look to Russia if this angst between Canada and the United States continues. And the latest report out of the United States EPA reads safety of herbicides such as glyphosate and paraquat, and I hope I'm pronouncing paraquat, and their possible link to Parkinson's disease. We see that coming out now. We have been saying this to the government of Jamaica for the longest time. We march everywhere we could have marched. The last place we marched was in front of Carib Theatre. We march. We hold up placard, we march, we cry, we do the programs, we call up people, we interview everybody, and we march on Parliament. I don't know which part else, but still, the Ministry of Agriculture and the government of Jamaica so locked into the trade deals that insist on them importing Roundup and everything else with glyphosate and paraquat, importing these things into the island, that we had a Minister of Agriculture telling us that glyphosate was not dangerous. And we know that there are many lawsuits across the world. We know there are some countries that ban the importation and use of glyphosate and Roundup and so on. In Europe, the European Union has banned this totally. But somehow, our people are still being given this. RADA is still involved in this. The Ministry of Agriculture is still involved in this. Roundup is still on the shelves. I don't know what it's going to take. I probably know. I think as a people, our job is to pay attention and to think of self-preservation. I'm not quite sure how we get so caught up in what these people are telling us and not doing. And the research is so pervasive, though. I mean, there's so much out there about glyphosate. But anyway, now they're linking it to Parkinson's, and they're linking it to Alzheimer's and so on. So according to the EPA, paraquat, gramazone is highly toxic to humans, and with glyphosate, both can damage the respiratory and digestive system. So this is a science now. So Science News, January 2025, is reporting that the weed killer may cause Parkinson's disease. We know already that it's banned in many countries, 70 countries, according to Science News, banned in the European Union from 2007, banned in China from 2017, banned in Brazil in 2020, but still here in Jamaica, you know, like the favored child. The Agriculture Ministry in Jamaica is underestimated, you know. We're not paying enough attention to agriculture from many, many, many different angles, including toxic poisons that we are importing into the country and using on our foods, our plants, our earth, our grass. The thing with these toxins that we're using for agriculture in Jamaica is that it's also part of the bigger plan, you know, because we know, and we've been saying this from the early 1990s, if you will, that Roundup and glyphosate would damage the soil, that you're not going to be able to plant after a while. The soil is going to become, you know, null and void, not good for use. You can't even be left for a while and you come back. It's just, you know how soil is. It takes a while and millions of years. So we've been saying this for a very, very long time. So we know this. But what's important about this is that, and we have always been saying that the Roundup and these products coming in from Monsanto were connected back to the GMOs, connected back to the Bill Gates and all of them, so that everything is connected. The Roundup was specifically made so that only the Roundup, the GMO plants made specifically, genetically engineered for soil that has been damaged and destroyed by Roundup. So, you know, so now these plants and these seeds are patented. So you can't buy them willy-nilly. And if you buy them, you can't replant them, because if you replant them or try to replant them, you can go to prison. This was always the case. We've been saying this from the 1990s, telling you what the plan of Monsanto was, but also later on the plan of Bayer. Bayer was a pharmaceutical company that joined with Monsanto, which was supposed to be dealing with agricultural products, etc. Let me take a quick break and come back.
Say goodbye to the ordinary and hello to Tropical Blue Natural Spring Water. Nature's bounty in a bottle. The time by Tropical Blue Natural Spring Water is
now 6:49, and we're back. So if you remember those early programs that we had from the 1990s to early 2000s, all the way to 2006, 2007, and then, you know, more sporadically over time, this was what we were saying, that all the products were linked. The plan was a greater plan, that you have to kill the soil. It's going to take a while to kill the soil. What was going to kill the soil? Roundup was going to kill the soil. But you also have to kill yourself. And because remember, they're talking about overpopulation and all of that. And you also have to be sick. You have to get Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, because that connects back to the pharmaceutical company. Then we see these two companies, multinational corporations. We see these conglomerates, Bayer and Monsanto, literally joining together. Bayer buying out Monsanto, teaming up. It's a pharmaceutical company teaming up with what was seen as a predominantly agricultural conglomerate. So these two, when you see these two come together, you know it's crazy. And then we have Bill Gates on the other end. We saw what happened during COVID, because he knew what was coming. I mean, he's part of the whole thing. Now he is one of the right-hand men in the Trump the Trump regime, which is moving into technocracy. It sounds like a whole lot. To me, it is very simple, and I hope that I'm articulating it so that you're understanding what we're saying. But it is all connected. It was always all connected. This is what it was meant to be. It's unfolding in the way it was planned. No, it's not chaotic at all. It appears chaotic, but all of this is orchestrated chaos. And so you have everything happening everywhere all at once, and your head is in a spin. But the bottom line for us, we need to get our heads out of that spin, stabilize ourselves, find our center, and recognize that we are on our own. We are on our own, and nobody's going to do it for us. Just look at what's happening. The immigration matter is also part of the bigger plan. Where do you think this is going to go? Every country on tenterhooks. As a matter of fact, we hear even the Prime Minister of Jamaica making some outrageous statement about facing a judge or facing a master. And, all of that is just a knee-jerk reaction. We should be more concerned with, of course, security generally, but water security and food security. I'm going to say something here which is going to, I think, for us is the most critical thing. You see, what is going to make anyone who wants to live and work in the United States eligible to do so? Because they're going back to the Constitution, they're talking about birthright citizenship and so much more. But they've also said, if you are eligible to live and work in the United States, then you need to have your documents. They're saying to even the Native Americans, the indigenous people, when they left England and the rest of Europe to America, they saw the Native Americans on that land. And yes, they bullied them and killed a lot of them and took their land and stole their land and celebrated in a big holiday called Thanksgiving and pushed them on reservations. But these people are of the land. They belong to the land. So, but even them, there are reports of some of them being scraped up and huddled into detention centers to be deported to I don't know where. So we're hearing that even the Native Americans are being told, walk with your documents of citizenship, that you belong here. And everyone is being told that, just in case. Well, except I suppose for, some, and in a while we probably can figure out who that some is. But so people are being told, walk with your documents, walk with your identification. So where is this leading? How can you remain in the U.S., live and work in the U.S., without identification, without identifying yourself? So this is going to be pretty important. This is taking us into the next phase. So all this chaos is important. It's necessary. People have to be afraid. You have to have all the news channels reporting on this. It's part of the predictive program. You have to see the massive planes carrying those who have overstayed and those who are now called criminals in chains back to their country of origin. And so Jamaica, obviously one of that, and we're told that we're to expect, planes coming in with Jamaicans who might have been in prison. One thing we know is that that's an ongoing situation. The deportation planes coming from the UK and the US, that hadn't stopped. That's an ongoing situation. But now we're hearing there are other planes that will come as part of this immigration policy. So the question is, now people are going to have to identify who they are. The same thing is happening in the UK. A very similar thing is happening in the UK. It started with Brexit. It's just, on the back of what's happening in America now, kind of escalating. But, yeah, and we see that in other parts of Europe. So why this is important is that, from my understanding, what that is setting the table for is for the digital IDs. The digital IDs. And, it's going to be, I suppose, various ways in which you can get this digital IDs. So it's going to be biometrics. But biometrics is also part of the Great Reset. It is part of the technocracy and its evil twin, as would say, transhumanism. From the minute they announced or took COVID, which anyway, so that's a whole other story. But from the minute we had this whole lockdown in that period when they talk about SARS-CoV-2, it was always part of the bigger plan. It was always the Great Reset. It was conceptualized by Klaus Schwab. It was articulated by King Charles when he was Prince Charles. It's been carried out as part of the World Economic Forum and the United Nations plan. So everything that is happening is what was meant to happen. So nothing is strange, nothing is shocking. It's from one to the other. Biden passed the baton to Trump. It's the very same thing. It looks different, but it's the same thing. It's part of the wider plan. And I want to come back to Jamaica now to say that what our responsibility becomes survival, self-preservation. And the first thing you need is water, and the second thing is food. But if you look, there's also a trade war that might escalate into something else that is happening between the United States and China. So do not ignore that. And so this whole talk about Panama is an interesting conversation that's ongoing about Panama. If you peel that away, you see that that's just another part of the that Cold War between China and the United States. It hasn't stopped. It's not going to stop. It's going to go on for a while. Now, in the Caribbean, people are talking about Jamaica and all of that, but do not forget the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative. The Caribbean waters is owned by the United States. So, regardless of what's happening with China, it's like the South Seas, right? Where we have the South China Seas, where we have all these American bases that are looking forward or looking to China. Remember, way back in the early 2000s, when China was moving out, going out to conquer, conquering on to conquer, to use a biblical term, with the soft diplomacy. One of the things they said, you're in our waters in the South China Seas. You have set up bases, and you're pointing your weapons at China. You have surrounded us in the South China Seas. Now we're going out where you are. And so that was part of China's plan to go out into the areas in response to what was happening in the South China Seas. And so but here in the Caribbean, under Barack Obama, remember that they re-signed the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative. They went to Canada and they gave the entire Caribbean waters to the United States. Remember, so in terms of militarization of the Caribbean waters, that is firmly in the hands of the United States. So the United States is not fearing China militarily in the Caribbean. I am not buying into that argument. I do not think so. There are other things happening. There's a Cold War, there's a trade war, there's so much happening there. And as you heard Kwame Pianke said last week, it's a last gasp for the United States because it recognizes where it is in terms of being a superpower in relation to China. And so it's a last-ditch effort. I'm going to take a break because we do have an interview coming up and we'll go through some more of this. But by law, the EPA must review, now go back to the EPA quickly, must review and reapprove pesticide every 15 years. In 2021, the EPA provisionally reapproved these weed killers, and there are thousands of lawsuits in the U.S. claiming harm and damages from these agents. But agro giant Syngenta is saying that they're safe. Now, we're also getting this very same argument from the from Jamaica and the Ministry of Agriculture. But remember, Syngenta is also a pharmaceutical giant. So it's an interesting situation that is unfolding. I'll take a quick break and come back. No, we do. Yeah, let me do this. All right, so I think we do have time to go through this quickly to say that the herbicides are still being used in Jamaica. The toxic Roundup and all the others, the pesticides are still being used in Jamaica. They are regulated by the Ministry of Health and Wellness by way of the Pesticides Control Authority. So the Ministry of Health and Wellness is complicit in this. Health and Wellness regulating Roundup and glyphosate, but saying that they are safe. This is a conundrum. What our responsibility this year is that we must pay careful attention to food security. We must pay careful attention to food safety, also water security. What we have in Jamaica, and I was talking about China just now, is that if you look in terms of how China is buying or leveraging land in Jamaica, is that, remember, when Portia Simpson Miller went to China to give away Jamaican lands, especially the Roaring River lands. Remember that when we challenged that, they said they were giving China lands in St. Catherine in the middle of the island. And China said, no, we've gone up in our plains and we've looked down, and the lands we want are the ones opening to the sea in the Roaring River watershed area. There's a reason for that, because America controls the Caribbean waters militarily. And they can come in at any time because they control it. The Caribbean gave that control to America a few years ago. So we have the militarization of the Caribbean waters. But interestingly enough, China, if you look at where China is situating itself across the island, it is on the coastline. It is looking out to the sea, and it is locking off the ocean, the coastline, from Jamaicans. So there's no way that you can enter these spaces. And they're in their own way. This is part of the militarization of the oceans, the militarization of the sea on China's part, because China is leveraging its own safety and security. It understands that it is fighting America. It had this information before it got into the Caribbean, which was how to protect itself from the United States in the way that they are doing in the South China Sea. So it's a very similar thing here. This is basically the bottom line. Push come to shove, we have no access to the waters, no access to the ocean, because this all goes back to what is military. All right, I do have to go to the phone lines. To my first very special guest online. So we're standing by for that. Let me know when you have our sister Nana Abena Grace James, who we're standing by for. She is the managing director and CEO of Merita Technologies. She is her training and experience has been in business and human resource management. And she's a former member of a CFTA, a Canadian grassroots movement that advocated for the shutting down of a racist exhibit about Africa at the Royal Ontario Museum. She lived in Ghana, and while there, she helped women farmers receive the Women in Farming Project Award. She's now in Kenya. She's a former board member of Aswaga Gari Women's Corp, where she assisted with the expansion of the operation to an increasing female staff population. Her Pan-African work expanded when she officially repatriated to Ethiopia. She was a facilitator for SRDC and organized a trade and investment conference in Ethiopia and afterwards Jamaica. And she's continuing her NGO work. She's now in Kenya, as we said before. She moved there through her IT company CSR Mission, and we join her live online. Right now, she's also worked in Tanzania. I should mention that. Our sister, Nana Abena Grace James. Nana Abena, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, you're loud and clear. Thank you so much for making the time. We tried to link with you a few weeks ago with our sister Yvonne in at the conference in Kenya, but it didn't happen. But here you are. Welcome, Akwaba.
Yeah. Yes, yo.
Good to have you.
Yeah.
Good to have you online. We're inside of Black History Month, and you have lived all across Africa as a Jamaican who has decided to make this move to the continent of Africa. This is phenomenal. Tell us, what was behind the thinking?
Okay. Being Jamaican, it's not difficult at all. You know, growing up, listening to all of the reggae songs, talking about Africa, talking about back to Africa. So it was, you know, that thought was always there. Mm-hmm. Not having a clear pathway though. Just know it was like a dream, you know, yes. Maybe one day, kind of. But my life changed after that, I would say, incident or movement, advocacy work in Canada. Mm-hmm. That's when Africa really took shape in my mind.
Yes.
And right after start familiarizing myself, informing myself about what life is like in Africa. There was some friends, people we met in Toronto that was from the continent. So, you know, that whole mind space started to be filled with real thoughts, real information. Mm-hmm. And it was from that, finding out actually that there's so much of the Jamaican culture that is found in Ghana, you know, because still at that time, Jamaica is what I know.
Yes.
And start, you know, in talking to a few Ghanaians we met at the University of Toronto, we realized that, hold on a second, there's a lot that they're saying that we're familiar with. And so that was behind our first trip. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was married with my first child when we started the advocacy work. And when we had our second daughter, when she was 3 years old, that's when we first went to Ghana. And going to Ghana was just life-changing.
Wow.
Because, yes, so many things I grew up around here, I saw, heard, I was experiencing on the trip to Ghana. So that just really solidified in my mind that my heritage is from Ghana. And then it just moved my soul. And I thought, okay, this is where I will be repatriating to.
Right. But you've moved across the continent since then.
Yes.
And I can, so you moved from Ghana was that from Ghana to Ethiopia?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll just throw in there. So there's a little component of what I like to do. I love to travel. I love to learn things, and I love to experience authentic cultures. And so, you know, even if I had stayed in Ghana, I would have still traveled to many other countries.
Yeah,
right?
I totally get it. Yes.
Yeah. But with our work, my husband and I are in IT. We have our own software development company. So that helps a lot, you know, because I tell people all the time, if I was probably a doctor or, you know, a teacher, my travel would be limited to vacation time. But because of the IT part, I can work from the beach, you know, once I can connect to the internet.
Yes.
So that was also the other thing that helped the moving around, and then just really loving and wanting to experience Africa. So, yeah. On a visit to Ethiopia, we decided to stay.
How long did you stay in both, in Ghana and Ethiopia?
Well, Ghana, at the time, it was a small cycle for 2 years. We lived there. And then we still maintain till this day our connection. We have family there. We were adopted into a family which has still, even now, I went to Ghana in October and I had to go to the family house and visit with everyone. So it's still strong and alive. But when we were in Ethiopia, we were there for almost 4 years.
Oh, that's a good time.
Yes.
And then from Ethiopia, you moved on to Kenya. Or was it Tanzania before Kenya?
No, it was Kenya first.
Okay.
Because, those many years ago, the challenge was really with the infrastructure and the ones that we needed to operate our business. So internet, consistent electricity, those will always impact us. And so at the time in Ethiopia, it was not what it is today. And so on a trip to Kenya, we realized that Kenya was much more advanced. We could have better connection to the internet. The electricity was better. And so, we decided to move to Kenya.
Which is one of the things we want to talk about, just to look at the continent of Africa. And I think you're rightly placed to do that, to look at resilience and to talk a little bit about our shared experiences, but also the contemporary challenges. I think from an IT perspective, you are well placed to kind of help us to understand what's happening on the continent of Africa. Sometimes we do get the impression that even regardless of how we see each other, that the challenges are the same, but Africa and many parts of Africa are doing much better, if you will, than many of us in the Caribbean where IT is concerned. Am I right?
Yes. Again, it's a huge, landmass with all of the variables that you can think of. There are some countries that it's for us to go and spend 1 week there is very challenging. And then there are others, like the example we gave, like Kenya and in Tanzania, where it's seamless and from different perspectives. So Kenya is one of the top rated tech countries, I would say, because you have many of the universities are graduating young people with experience, unlike in other countries where the actual practical experience they don't get until after they graduate. So you will find it's easier for us to find software developers in Kenya than it is in Tanzania.
And from where you stand, looking across the continent, and it's a big ask, this, so take it as you will. But looking across the continent, what then would you say is, and which countries would you say are countries that stand out now with progress in information technology, and especially within the context of where we're heading with artificial intelligence and so on?
Definitely, Kenya is in the top 10, and South Africa is great as well. There's Rwanda to some extent. Ghana is doing much better now because I would say even up to 5 years ago, I was still not satisfied with the infrastructure in Ghana. as far as technology and development. The young people were there, the innovation, the creativity, the drive, enthusiasm is there. The support of the government and corporate is there as well. But when you're looking at development and actually running a company, it was still challenging. But my recent visit, I'm telling you, it was just amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, and to hear me say that, one should know that, yes, it is. because I'm looking at things from a different eye, than the average person. So I was able to go to, there's several really great coffee shops and tech hubs that you can go to and just post up if you're one of the, digital nomads, where you can go and work. Some of the areas you don't get a great signal, but there are now more players in the, as a provider. And so you can supplement and, do a little dance to ensure that you can get good connectivity. And the young people, they, like I said earlier, they're really enthusiastic, extremely creative, and have, strong drive. So those are the things, underpinnings that's needed for excellence.
All right. Nana, thank you so much for staying with us. You made this decision to live on the continent of Africa and have gained so much, I'm sure, in the process, especially because you have moved across the continent of Africa. For a Jamaican living or making that decision, what are some of the challenges that you faced? And do you think that these, to what extent have the country that you've been to, managed to fix, if you will, some of these challenges for diasporans returning to the continent over time?
Okay. So, challenges. Let me start first with the pluses, though.
Yes.
Yes. And this is my honest and fair assessment. Being Jamaican is a major plus. Coming from the Caribbean, a plus. Because there's so much that is similar to what we've grown up around, what we've known in the Caribbean, that we find in many of the countries across the continent. So, you'll have your Kingston, right?
Yes.
Busy, metropolitan, happening, the uptown and the downtown. You have that. And then of course you'll have your Oterias. That's kind of where, Dar es Salaam, where you can find me most of the time. It's similar.
Yes.
It's similar to that. I'm 7 minutes walk to the beach. And then, you'll have your area, like there's areas like going up Blue Mountain, where it's mountainous, it's cold. Nairobi is actually very cold, much more than we expect. So there is this, you can go from the beach up into the mountain.
Yes.
And then just the culture, we have experienced light gone, and we know when light gone, we know what to do.
That's right. Of
so
course,
unlike the African descendants who are coming out, maybe even first or second generation coming out of the UK, Europe, out of the US, this is something that they're not familiar with. Right. And so the organization that I'm the chairperson for, we help the historic diaspora, which is the sector of the African diaspora that we fit under. Right. We help them to move to the continent, specifically Tanzania, but also we help if they're choosing another place like Kenya or somewhere else. So we help them to relocate. We help them to prepare to come when they get here, to navigate the system because it's different, right? And then to settle in. And then the organization has several projects that once they're settled and ready to contribute to the neighborhood, community, or the country, we also have mechanisms for them to do that. So,
and how important is it then to understand that, because I do know that, because we have this connection to Africa and we've experienced this many, many times where persons go in and you expect to fit right in. But how important is it to understand and to know beforehand, if not, to be guided once you're there, that, this is another country, the system is different, the culture is also different, and there's a need to be able to understand what's happening, but to live there. Because sometimes we hear that Africa will chew you up and spit you out,
Yes.
Yeah.
We've heard that, and I've experienced it. Again, the organization is open to people coming from U.S., UK, Canada, and the Caribbean. So we not just me personally, because my life has gone a particular path for many reasons.
Yes.
I am married to a Jamaican man, so our family has that commonality, and that centers us, and we both are Pan-African. So not just looking at my personal life, but the people that I've served and their experience. You can so based on and the food and how we talk and how we relate to each other. I find that those from the Caribbean, especially Jamaica, whether it's East or West Africa, that transition is much easier.
Yes.
However, there is still differences, even differences between East and West Africa that one should know when you are choosing to repatriate. If you, to use one of the analogies my husband uses is, if you want slow and steady, right? It's East Africa. If you look, he looks at sports, and so when you're looking at athletics, East Africa has the long distance runners, right? The best in the world. And so things are a bit slower on the East side. There are some countries that pay more attention to the ethnic groups. So there's a difference between even Kenya and Tanzania. Tanzania tries and does a very good job at, let's say, going around those lines between ethnic groups. There is a plus and minus to doing it that way. But then you look at Kenya, who highlights theirs, and so you find if living in Kenya, if you tell me somebody's name, if I meet someone on the road and they say they're Kenyan and they give me their name, it's very likely that I can guess which ethnic group they're from. Okay, because there's distinction in even the way they speak, the way they are, the language, certain things within a country based on ethnic groups. So there are some, you can't know everything, but there's some general things that you should know, and it is advisable to do your research. It is advisable to visit for about minimum 2 weeks, do a 2-week visit before you actually pack up and leave. Also look out and vet for, organizations that have proven their work or can prove their work. Again, when you look at West Africa, now they're the fast ones, right? If you want something energetic and hot and spicy and fast, West Africa. So there's strong difference in, the Ghanaian culture, Nigeria.
Yes.
When you look at the athletes, that what my husband uses, or for me, the food. I tend to find food from West Africa is much more to our liking, especially those from the Caribbean, than East Africa. but there's ways around it. So, in Tanzania, it's easy to get plantain. Plantain hard to get in Kenya.
All right, so talk to me about that, the food, because how alike is it to, say, Jamaican food? What we can find from Jamaica there? Because you mentioned plantain just now.
So one should be aware of the actual, the geographic areas, and it goes along, with just where you can get certain food. So in Nairobi, it's highlands, it's colder there. So just like in Blue Mountain, going up the hill, you're going to get coffee and you're going to get tea because that's a colder area grows. But then when you come down to like Ochi or Mombasa or Dar es Salaam or Accra in Ghana, and a lot of the coastal, even in Liberia, you're going to find, you'll find plantain, you'll find coconut, soursop, sweet sop. That's fine.
It's just the way you say soursop. Yes.
Mango, all about. And then, in terms of the meat, I mean, there's chicken and fish just cooked different ways. You have your rice and things. So food-wise, you might just have to tweak certain things. Definitely. And no matter where I'm from, right? This is not prejudicial. But the jerk seasoning, you want to carry some jerk seasoning in your suitcase.
All right, so there is, if you ever carry jerk seasoning in your suitcase, now, so for people who are coming in for business and business ideas, this is, there's also this availability then to set up factories or producing stuff like jerk and so on, Jamaican condiments and so on. Hold on, Nana Ebena, the doing business in Kenya, because this is what you do, and in Africa generally, how easy is it to do?
Okay, there are challenges. Yes, and the segment before that you talked about, how is it. And what are some of the challenges are in moving?
Yes.
The largest area, I would say, especially for Jamaicans and from those from the Caribbean, it is to set up a business and to operate with ease and I think a certain level of comfort. If you don't know certain things or even what to ask for, the right questions to ask, you will not get the information easily that you need in order to start your business, register it, and to operate. Especially in the East African countries in general. These are general statements.
Yes.
But I've found that you will go to even the investment offices, whether it's the Tanzanian investment office or the Kenya Investment Center, and they are there catering to large companies, government projects, investment initiatives. And so they will speak to you in those terms. Okay. If you, many of us, especially from Jamaica, we like to do things our own, But also when you look at the economics, sometimes we don't have the money to pay an attorney to do all of the work for us. And in doing so, sometimes you go to many of these offices and you get the answer that is just answering what you asked. And then when you start your business, you realize that, okay, I needed to put this in place or that in place. I needed to also do these and also do that. And so it tends to be challenging for people. I am going to say that.
And this goes beyond bureaucracy, right? It's just if you do not know, then you won't know. So the thing to do is to find out. But how do you find out? How do you get this information that you need?
do a lot of hard work. So, for instance, personally, and now I'm doing it within the organization, you remember I mentioned earlier, one of the best thing to do is come for a visit. So I actually go to these offices and ask these questions. So I go on their website, I see what's on there. I also on the ground go to the offices and ask the questions, speak to people, those who are in business and those who are providing whether it's a business license or, tapping into the customer base. So you really need on the ground information. And also understanding the culture of the place. So people here would prefer to meet in person. So you will call an office and you're not going to get as much information as you would need. However, when you do take the time out to meet someone for coffee or for dinner, they will be very open, very helpful, but it's also just the way people do business. In the US, I'm going to just pick up the phone and call or go on somebody's website, and I get the information I need. But in both East and West Africa, we find that personal connection, that people to people discussion, that's the best way to get information. And
I'm listening to you. I'm listening to you and I'm thinking that I don't know that Jamaica is that much different anyway. If you put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's trying to come in to do business.
I said that earlier. Yeah, that's why I said it's easy. It's easier for Jamaicans to transition than people from the Caribbean.
Okay,
because it's so similar. I used to ship stuff from Jamaica to the U.S. And I'm telling you, being on the ground in Kingston, trying to get the paperwork to clear this stuff and to ship. Oh my gosh!
You better know somebody. I'm laughing, but it's not even funny. Yeah. I hear them talking about getting rid of bureaucracy now, and this is happening across the world, and Jamaica has jumped on that bandwagon about getting rid of bureaucracy. I mean, it's a good idea, but then for whom is the question? Who you're getting rid of the bureaucracy for? And it's going to be harder for us to do business on the island, or for even returning residents to do business on the island. So I'm seeing a similarity there, as you pointed out earlier. So Nana Abena, with just a few minutes to go, just 2 minutes to go, let me thank you for it, but also to say, so the Jamaican community, talk to me quickly about the Jamaican community, if you will, that you've come across the continent of Africa and the extent to which Jamaicans have repatriated to the continent.
Okay, so Ghana, a lot of Jamaicans are there and have been there for years. So Ghana has been, very popular and common. You're walking down the street and hear people speaking patois.
Yes.
Also, with that, historical strong connection.
Yes.
And food and just mannerisms of people. You will find a large population in Ghana. I would say my family has ties from Jamaica to Liberia. You will find some residue of it in Liberia. Liberia has one of the best food on the island, on the continent, sorry. Fast forward, I'm coming quick to Kenya. Jamaicans are taken to Kenya, and there is a growing number there. And they are in many different industries. Agriculture is a big one. And even, in whether it's in education, many different sectors. My company, we're in IT, there's a few that are. And, we're actually getting ready to launch an application that will be the diaspora who have repatriated to the continent will be really happy to find out about this, because it helps the communities to be safe. It's a security security application, because that's also one of the things that isn't spoken about, but can be an issue sometimes. In West Africa, we've had several issues with several safety concern issues.
Yeah, security.
In East Africa, not
yes.
as much, but it's there. One of the anecdotes I tell is I was in Ethiopia and I heard somebody, like there's a noise outside, like somebody was trying to get in the compound. And I opened my window and I have neighbors that their house is close by, but I realized I didn't know how to say help in Amharic. I was learning Amharic, but you just never think of, that word.
Yes,
you're more focused on hello, goodbye, how much is this, how much is that?
Yeah.
And I didn't know. And it sent a strong message home for me.
I should say, Ishi. So, but let me let me ask you though. Did you learn help in Amharic, along the way?
The very next day, I had to ask someone, what is help? Now I don't remember because it's been over 10 years. But it is something that, just certain things people will overlook in their transition and focusing on whether it's settling their family in or starting their lives in Africa, but we're here through the company, targeting safety concerns using technology. We're here with the organization, the 6th Region TZ, to help people to prepare to come. And then when you get here, to then help you to settle.
How can we find you?
We are online. Go to our website for the organization. It is 6regiontz.org. We are, the office is in Dar es Salaam, but we work with organizations in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Sierra Leone, in Kenya, in Rwanda, Botswana. So we're all over.
Okay.
So all you can, if you're not, if you want to go to another place instead of Tanzania, we can help you.
All right.
And then as far as the my software development company, who provides customized applications for companies in all industries, you can find us at meritatech.com. That's MERITATECH, meritatech.com.
All right.
And
brilliant.
You should know what Merita means.
What does Merita mean?
It's Kemetic. It's Meri, which is beloved land.
Of course. Thank you so much, my sister. Thank you so much. Listen, we're going to invite you back, of course, and we can have a longer discussion. But this was just our introductory program. So anyone you want to say hello to quickly before we sign off? I'll give you 30 seconds.
Yes. Okay. Well, I want to say hello to Uncle Bercho in Ochi. And yes, and just my friends and family. My brother's in St. Mary. I have brothers down there,
Which part in St. Mary?
Osborne Pen.
But
where my family come from. That's my maiden name. Yes, me have a town named after me.
Nearly most we related.
Hey, you never know.
I'm telling you. All right, this is brilliant.
So we definitely have to get back together because there's a lot of movement. With the African Union and the 6th Region, which we are part of the 6th Region, and we'll definitely. And so I really would like to share some of that information with those who.
That's going to be our part 2 discussion. Stand by. We have that as our part 2 discussion. Thank you so much, Nana Abena.
It was a pleasure meeting you, and thanks for this opportunity.
Same here. Thank you so much.
One love.
All right. Nana Abena there in Kenya. She'll be back with us shortly. And in this segment of the program, I'm going to be speaking with our brother and a friend to the program, Brother Ako Mutota, about the Caribbean Dialogue Card and Haiti Action Committee. The online event is this afternoon in solidarity with Haiti Part 4, Militarism in the Caribbean. Brother Ako Mutota is on the phone lines, and we go straight to him. Greetings, Brother Ako Mutota. How are you doing?
Good morning, Sister Kabu. I am well. Thank you very much for inviting me to your program this morning.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for making the time. Interestingly enough, we were talking about the militarization of the Caribbean waters this morning within the context of the South China Seas, what's happening there, how China went out and acquired and is in the process of acquiring this coastal lands all across the Caribbean, locking those coastal lands off from Jamaicans and from other Caribbean people, making these into private properties, but literally in charge of the coastline, in charge of the seas, while the Caribbean waters itself is militarized by the United States. It was in Trinidad and Tobago, your country, that they had that big meeting, wasn't it, Brother Akko, a few years ago? The Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, when they strengthened that. Don't know if you recall. Do you remember that?
Yes. And in fact, recently, there was what is called a SOFA Status of Forces Agreement signed in Trinidad just about a month ago with the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this was done without any consultation with the population. Additionally, the U.S. is building one of the largest embassies, I think, anywhere in the world in Trinidad at the moment. So we have a situation, and additionally, this there's also a SOFA Status of Forces Agreement signed with Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
Now, many of us believe that this is it has to do with the intentions the U.S. has for Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yes.
so. But it's important that we get this, because this militarization of the Caribbean, while as ex-colonies we have always been militarized to some extent,
mm-hmm.
it intensified in the aftermath of the Grenada Revolution,
mm-hmm.
when the Caribbean regional RSS, the Regional Security Force, was formed.
Mm-hmm.
And that still exists in Barbados at the moment, and we are not understanding that these things are happening all around us. In fact, there's an incident, I think sometime last year, in which a Trinidad businessman had some issue, and he went to Barbados, and the RSS arrested him and repatriated him back to Trinidad.
Mm.
So this is a very, very serious issue in the Caribbean, and we have always advocated, those of us in the progressive movement, for the Caribbean to be a zone of peace. And with this militarization, the Caribbean, it seems, is heading to become a zone that is going to be involved in superpower and other kinds of conflicts, which would be inimical to the interests of the people.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. Army and the U.S. military has never intervened anywhere in the interest of people of African descent, or people of what we like to call the global South. So to have our governments at this point in time signing agreements with the U.S. military, and we know the attitude of the U.S. military, the destructive capacity of the U.S. military, and for our governments to be signing these agreements without any kind of referenda or involvement of the people is really treacherous, and a lack of any commitment to our sovereignty.
And troubling to say the very least, as we see with Trinidad and also with Guyana. And you're right about Venezuela. We see Marco Rubio in the region right now. They have already said that Maduro is not recognized, so they have gone out and recognized the opposition leader. So that's a whole other contention. But Marco Rubio has made his intentions very clear. So the extent to which the Caribbean waters is militarized, I think, is going to determine what happens in the region. How serious is this, Brother Akko? We have just a few minutes before we go into you telling us about the event today. But how serious is what is unfolding or what is about to happen? How serious is that for Caribbean people?
It's very serious. What some people may not recognize, we already had an occupation in Trinidad for a number of years. Mm-hmm. We had several military bases in Trinidad. In Chaguaramas on the southwest peninsula. We had in central Trinidad. We had on the southeast coast in my community of Guayagüari. And also, what a lot of people do not know also is that during World War II, the jungle training facility for several U.S. troops before they went into the Pacific was in Trinidad in an area called Manzanilla, where U.S. troops would be in the hills there training. But regarding the occupation, the elders who lived through that would tell you it was a very terrible time for Trinidad and Tobago. The Calypsonians, that Calypso Sparrow sang, some may recall, which became Rum and Coca-Cola thing. But there is this Calypso Sparrow sang about the Yankees gone and Sparrow take over. Now, it was alluding to the prostitution in Trinidad and Tobago that was facilitated by the presence of the U.S. military base. Elders would tell you that they would come into the city and they would brutalize people and engage in all kinds of violent acts, and then they could not be charged based on the agreements we had with the U.S. government. And this is what SOFA is, the State of Forces Agreement. It is a situation where your sovereignty does not exist once the U.S. military agreement is signed with your government. In other words, your courts have no jurisdiction, okay? If one of your citizens is killed, you have no recourse to the court. So this is a very serious situation, especially for people who are the descendants of the enslaved and for people who were colonized by European forces. So this is why in the last conversation I had with you, I spoke of the fact that we are being misled by our academics and some people who are saying we're in a post-colonial period, when in fact we're in a neo-colonial period. And this is a classic case of neo-colonialism that we have to teach our young people what this is, so that we don't return to this kind of subjugation and this compromise of our sovereignty.
How can we afford to ignore this? And here is one way to find out more about what is happening. This is later on this afternoon. Tell us about the Zoom meeting that is planned in solidarity with Haiti militarism in the Caribbean.
Yes, so let me, if I may, Sister Kabu, let me just give people the meeting code, if I may, with your permission.
Yes, go ahead.
The Zoom meeting ID is 842-5882. 6982, and let me repeat that again, 842-5882-6982, and the passcode is 084027. The passcode again is 084027. So, yes, so this issue of militarism and the solidarity with Haiti. So let me just make about three quick points here. And the first point I want to make about the situation in Haiti is what I think a lot of people are not understanding, is that Haiti and the situation in Haiti has been subjected to a massive disinformation campaign, which and in so many instances, that's why people are confused about the situation in Haiti. You are hearing, for example, some people tell you this guy Barbecue is some revolutionary figure and he's progressive, when in fact he's part of the thuggery of paramilitarism in Haiti. Okay? But because of this disinformation campaign, people are very confused as to what is existing in Haiti and what positions should be understood. Yes. So, for example, you look at to understand this situation. To understand the situation, you have to go back to the period of 1991, when the government of Jean-Bertrand Aristide was overthrown. Aristide was the first popular elected president in the history of Haiti. And if you read some of the articles, there's one I think in a program called it's on the Institute of Democratic Policy Studies. I don't remember the name now, but what that was suggesting, that article was suggesting, is that there were many forces internationally and internally who felt that Aristide was not ruling democratically. They said, to quote the article, he was elected democratically, but he was not ruling the country democratically. Now, we know what this so-called democratic process means for all of us in the English-speaking Caribbean, right? It has brought poverty, misery, and all the negative political and economic circumstances you could think about exist. So what Aristide was trying to do was to use the system to bring benefits to the people of Haiti. And there were internal forces and external forces who did not like this because they were accustomed to the yes, massa kind of political leadership, right? Who when they say jump, you ask how high, and Aristide did not fit that bill. In fact, the international forces did not want Aristide to be the president. The person they loved was a guy called Marc Bazin, who was at one time an official of the World Bank.
Yes.
And there's a very interesting commentary from someone who was there the night, who was actually, her husband was involved. She was a journalist, and she was in Haiti. And they were saying that on the night of the election, Jimmy Carter was supposed to be an independent observer, went to Aristide and asked him to declare Baza the winner. And Aristide said, well, if you have that kind of information, then you go and tell them, I'm not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the kind of scenario, and this is where everything started, right? Mm-hmm. So some are saying that Aristide was a dictator. No, he may have his contradictions, but the point is that he was a democratically popular elected leader, president of the country, right? And when that was ruptured, it laid the conditions or created the conditions for what we have now. So people have to be very clear on that. The point is, it is not what some people, and even though some people in the so-called left, some people in the Pan-African movement, some so-called people who believe in democracy, they are spreading this disinformation campaign.
Yes,
there is a rupture.
And CARICOM is also part of the problem.
Part of it, right? So there is this disinformation. So the point is that the democratic process was interrupted.
Yes.
When they tried to restore it, Aristide won again. And for a second time, they again overthrew Aristide. And so this is where the problem has started. So don't get confused with the talk about they need international observers and they need all of these things. A rupture took place in which the powerful forces, especially the U.S. and the European community, did not want Aristide to be the president. And so what we are seeing here is the result of that intervention, both a political intervention and a military intervention, and that is the cause of the situation in Haiti. The other factor is the militarization of Haiti, right? There are several attempts previously by the UN, again, to so-called solve the problem, and they brought in foreign military. One of the military they brought in was the Bangladeshis, I think, who spread
cholera.
I think
cholera.
Yeah, cholera. Yes, it was cholera, right? Because they were doing the stuff in the rivers and it poisoned the waters in Haiti, right? This time, knowing that the international community, right, and the progressive forces would not agree to this, they utilized the so-called Pan-African idea by bringing Kenyan troops into Haiti. Now, I remember when the African leaders met with the Caribbean leaders in the Caribbean, I was very concerned. I think during the pandemic, they had an online meeting. I was very concerned because my view is that the current leaders in Africa, with the exception of those in the Sahel, and the current Caribbean leaders have no likeness or love or interest in anything Pan-African. They know these things when it is convenient. So it
is all wrapped up in the funding industrial complex. It's all wrapped up in the aid. So they sit down and they do this for the money. It's a kind of a begging situation, bowl begging, and they will sell each other out for the money. And this is basically what that meeting in Kingston was recently. That saw
exactly. It is what I call the mendicant mentality.
Yes.
Where we are always begging somebody to fund our struggle. You know, as Jose Marti so rightly put it, freedom is not begged for, it is seized. You don't go begging people to give you your freedom. You take your freedom.
Yeah. And what's interesting now, these very same Caribbean countries, including what's happening there in Haiti, with the latest policy decision, because it is by the new administration in the U.S. To withhold funding. This people are falling over themselves. We saw the former Kenyan Prime Minister saying, "But why are you falling over yourselves? This is a chance now to do for self." But we see the withholding of aid obviously is going to affect almost everything. The only country that the aid isn't withheld from is countries. It's Israel and Egypt. Nothing to do with the Caribbean countries. Yes. So where does that leave? Where does that leave all of this, including the militarism that we're talking about? A lot of that is tied to aid. The JCF, the army, a lot of our so-called military are dependent on U.S. aid. What happens now?
Well, they're going to continue to fund it. The things that matter to them, they will fund it. They are going to cut off some things like the World Health Organization funding and so on. But when it comes to the military funding, that is an endless pit. They are going to fund it. You know, because what has happened is that the United States, while it masquerades as a democracy, is more what some people call the national security state. And this is the model we are following, right, in the Caribbean here. So we are talking about democracy as if democracy is voting every 5 years. But democracy is much more than that.
Yes.
And so what is evolving in the Caribbean, and we always have this way of imitating and bastardizing things. So we are involving a distorted concept of the national security state. You know, and this collaboration through this status of forces agreement is going to inflict hell on people in the Caribbean unless we organize ourselves and reverse these trends. You know, we have been sleeping in the Caribbean for too long. You know, we have been too willing to be in a state of passivity, right, and not be proactive in terms of our own destiny and in terms of reorganizing our political and economic processes. Right?
And you say unless we organize ourselves, this has been a recurring theme. And in this space, I can tell you, and you know that, you know, this is something that we talk about a lot, how organizing ourselves. But this has been a challenge for us in the Caribbean, much less individual countries.
It is a challenge, Sister Cabo, simply because of the disinformation campaign. I don't think people realize how much, I mean, we unfortunately, we are not doing the kind of research and studies we should be doing. You would recall what was called the COINTELPRO program of the 1990s, okay? Which was a program established to undermine and disrupt progressive forces globally, targeted especially at the black movement in the U.S. and the civil rights movement in the U.S. Well, we have seen this thing gone on steroids. It is in the media. It is even in our education system. An educator was telling me something. At one point in time in the CXC program, there was a course called the Haitian Revolution. And there was a funding agency that came to, I think, the university in Trinidad, the UA in Trinidad, right, offering funding for something. And one of the demands they made was that we remove, right, the study of the Haitian Revolution. So it is a way of making us not understand certain issues. So the disinformation campaign is not just about distorting information. It is also what you call what they omit, or what you call sins of omission.
Yes.
So all of these things we have to understand. I mean, there is a massive campaign of disinformation to facilitate ignorance and confusion so that we don't understand what our real condition is.
So
and so this is why we are having this session, so that people can get some idea of what is taking place, because Jeb Sprague, who wrote the book Militarization and its Impact on Democracy in Haiti, has done extensive research on this issue, not just in Haiti, but throughout the Caribbean.
And he's one of the featured speaker this evening.
Yeah, he's one of the featured speakers.
Paramilitarism and the assault on democracy in Haiti. This should be really good. Who are the others?
Yes. The others are Maud Jean-Michel, who's a Haitian-born organizer in the U.S. and a radio host. Mm-hmm. And the other is an independent researcher called Corey Jukes, who was a former member of the security services in Trinidad, retired, and who has a lot of insight into the operations of these things relative to militarization.
Mm-hmm. And I see
we have a young man, Toivo Ashiki. He's an American of Namibian heritage. Actually, his father was one of the foreign minister for SWAPO at one point in time, and was in the government of SWAPO. So he's an activist scholar in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And so he'll be one of the contributors to the program to give an African perspective on this issue.
And the time?
The time is 5 p.m. Jamaica, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
All right. And once again, if you give us a Zoom ID and the passcode.
Yes, so let me just do that. The Zoom ID and passcode, the ID is 842-5882-6982. Let me repeat that again. 842-5882-6982 is the Zoom ID, and the passcode is 084027. Again, it's 084027. So that is the Zoom ID and passcode.
And it's an online event. It's happening today at 5 o'clock Jamaica time in solidarity with Haiti Part 4, Militarism in the Caribbean. Please do not miss this. Thank you so much, Brother Akko. I'll see you later at 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Sister Kabu. Thank you very much.
All right, Brother Akko Mutota there. Once again, Caribbean Dialogue card. And Haiti Action Committee invites you to an online event in solidarity with Haiti Part 4, Militarism in the Caribbean. Featured speakers, Jeb Spargo, author of Paramilitarism and the Assault on Democracy in Haiti. Maud Jean-Michel, Haitian organizer for the diaspora community and a radio host. And Corey Gilks, independent researcher out of Trinidad and Tobago. And you heard there's going to be a special guest, Toivo Ashiki, scholar activist, professor Africana Studies, Ustadi Kadiri. All right, and it's today, Sunday, February 2, 5 o'clock on Zoom. Who said these words? I was born in the beautiful parish of St. Anne, near the falls of the Roaring River. I grew up with nature and drank much of her inspiration. I know you know, but hey, we're throwing it out anyway. Who said these words? I was born in the beautiful parish of St. Anne, near the falls of the Roaring River. I grew up with nature and drank much of her inspiration. Who said those words? I have in my hands a St. Anne development order, and I keep asking this, and I've been asking this for a while. You know, did they change it somewhere along the line? Transfer of property of Laughing Waters in the parish of St. Anne to trustees upon trust for the permanent preservation of the property as an amenity. And this is the area in the that entire area you see them digging up now that they have given to China. Somebody needs to take this up. I have been talking about this for a while. I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on radio. The transfer of the property of Laughing Waters in the parish of St. Anne to trustees upon trust for the permanent preservation of the property as an amenity. This transfer is made the 25th day of April 2000 between the Urban Development Corporation, a statutory corporation established under the established under and existing by virtue of the Urban Development Corporation Act, having its office at 12 Ocean Boulevard in the city of Kingston, hereinafter called the Grand Tour, of the one part and the designated officials of the organizations more particularly described in the first schedule hereto, and the grantor hereinafter called the trustees, which expression shall include their successors and assigns of the other part. And then it goes on to say, whereas a grantor desires to transfer the Laughing Waters property to the trustees upon trust for its permanent preservation as an amenity, and in particular to protect and preserve the beauty, character, ecology of the property, comprising buildings, land with landscaping as a tropical gardens, and beach, more particularly described in the fourth schedule, hereto for the benefit of the public generally, and especially the lessees, licensees, or the invitees of the grantor, with the powers and subject to the provision hereinafter declared and contained, etc., etc. I deliberately read that because it's all legalese, but end of the day, the trust property shall not in any circumstances be sold or mortgaged. That is in the transfer document. Now, the bottom line is, these are some, I'm of the view that the Roaring River property is part of this Laughing Waters, that entire piece of land. You can just stay where they're digging up now, all the way to where the Laughing Waters falls itself are. It's just walking distance. So I think one of the things that we need to find out, and I probably should pass this on to Jabem. We have been talking about this for years, actually, and I can say who gave it to me because we have already said that, but let me leave that for today. But this is a copy of a document. This is a copy of the document. It's a legal document, and it seems to me to be protecting the Roaring River property that has been given to China. So the question is what is happening now on the Roaring River property? To what extent is that legal, bearing this document in mind? It's a document of many pages, probably about 25 or more pages. But the long and short of it is that the property is not to be sold, mortgaged, or given to anybody else, but to be kept for the people. You understand the point I'm making? I'm saying this because we are talking now about the extent to which we are losing access to our rivers, our water sources, our beaches, just our water on a whole, at a time when the world is preserving and protecting their water sources. One of the big discussions at the World Economic Forum, and you know who they are, last week and a half, was about topic preserving and protecting water sources. These are interesting times we're living in. We're losing everything that's there naturally to protect this nation. We're seeing the deportation orders in effect in the United States, and angst on all fronts. As I said earlier, it is part of the Great Reset. It has to happen for other things to happen, and a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. In the same way that we're seeing the smoke and mirror situation with the release or the argument or the discussion about releasing the files of JFK and RFK and MLK. There's a lot in that. I said this last week, and I'll just reiterate that, you know, so much is known about JFK already. I'm not quite sure what else. What we don't know, we already guess. And so it's more or less known. And also about RFK, what might not be known is about MLK. And even though it's in the dark and some of it is has been peeping out, and people have been talking about it in the shadows. Remember that he was wiretapped, and remember that everything he did was recorded. Remember that he was told, he was shown the results or the tapes and the texts, and he was called into Edgar Hoover's office or wherever they got to him, and he was told that either you kill yourself or you allowed yourself to be killed. Remember that, a lot of people are not ready for what might be released in the MLK documents, and that also is part of a psyop. They're talking about JFK and RFK when really and truly, why they're throwing MLK in it is because they're going to release this out at a time when they are getting rid of everything that is not them. Critical race theory and the rest of it. So bottom line is, for us, we must be prepared for what might be released in the MLK documents. Not so much concerned with who killed JFK, because we already know who killed JFK. Not so much about RFK, because we know that too, and we know why. This has been out there for a very long time, and a lot of those documents have been released already. So there's nothing there, and they're all telling you there's nothing there. So what's the big deal? It is Martin Luther King. It is MLK. It's that the African Americans will not be prepared, are not ready, and African people across the world for what might be released in those documents of Martin Luther King Jr. Just saying that. Once again, we're seeing a lot happening, but at the same time, remember, this is all part of the PSYOP. It is nothing that we did not know about, that we should not know about. We have been preparing ourselves for this for a very long time, to the extent that we have the knowing and the knowledge. Where we are not prepared is how we take care of our own self. Food security, water security, body security. There's a discussion in Africa now. The young people in Africa now are having a discussion online. Very interesting discussion. They're talking about slavery. This is not taught in Africa. In many of the universities, schools, primary schools, high school, slavery is not taught. Not taught at all. J.J. Rawlings sought to change that, and he did in Ghana. But many African countries do not teach slavery. So people in Africa do not necessarily have this information that we have here. They don't. Well, anyway, that's another thing. We have a minute to go before the cash pot. But just to say quickly that the young people are now discussing slavery, and they're talking about the Ashanti Kingdom, because the Ashanti history is written by the Ashanti. I heard and saw where Professor Hilary Beckles has said that, or suggested that Maroon history should be taught in the university or in schools, but definitely in the university. Go ahead. But when and where you enter will be an important and interesting thing. Listen first to the young people in Ghana talking about the Ashanti Kingdom. The conversation there is going to have to be had, even as we talk reparations. Time for well, they're trying to ban Black History Month in the United States, but I watched that press conference with the new press secretary for the new president, and she was asked that question, and she said, oh no, whether President Trump will sign the declaration or whatever they usually sign every month for the celebration of Reggae Month this year. So it is happening, but in the Ministry of Defense, or in the Defense Ministry, there's a whole other conversation going on, because Pete Hegseth is doing his own thing, I understand. It seems like they're banning Black History Month here in Jamaica too. I don't know, but it feels that way. So it's not just America. Let us stop talking about America and look at ourselves and look within ourselves, because sometimes we keep pointing out, but I don't think we're doing any better. Then ban Black History Month, too? That's a question. All right, we're going into the next segment of our program. I'm going to be talking in this segment about Jamaica's ancient archaeology. And my very special guest is lecturer archaeologist in the Department of History and Archaeology at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus, Dr. Leslie Gale Atkinson. She is the author of The Earliest Inhabitants, The Dynamics of the Jamaican Taino, edited by Leslie Gale Atkinson. She identifies as an indigenous woman. I don't know why we have identifiers here, Soles, but it says that, and is known as Boniani, Sweetwater Flower, within the Taino community. But she's live on the phone lines. Good morning, Dr. Leslie Gale Atkinson Swaby.
Good morning, my sister. How are you?
I am well. How are you doing?
Giving thanks for life.
Yeah, I miss you in the studio this time around, but hey, we're going to have the conversation online. I really must thank you for always making yourself available for these discussions with Jamaica's ancient archaeology. We talked about the book that you edited, The Earliest Inhabitants, The Dynamics of the Jamaican Taino. And let me thank you for that book. It was part of our Running African Book Club. So many of our book club members read that. And one of the things I recall was how surprised a lot of people were about just the information on the ancient history of Jamaica and the first people. Now, I want to start there, Leslie, to look at the state or development, if you will, of Jamaica's archaeology since the time you wrote the book, or even before that, and where we are now.
Oh, well, Jamaica is a very challenging, subject in archaeology because we don't exactly fit the box. You have to realize that, many of the ideas that have developed in terms of how the region was colonized and settled, largely started out as ideas and theories. And then, hopefully in time, some of these theories have been confirmed through evidence. Mm-hmm. Jamaica doesn't really fit in the box in comparison to the evolution and the development of the other islands. I mean, typically, it is believed that the region was peopled. Most people only think of, colonization as associated with the Europeans, but the indigenous people, they colonized the territories first, and it started possibly as early as 8,000 years ago on islands, like Trinidad and even earlier in places like Cuba. Mm-hmm. So we have those areas being settled thousands of years before Jamaica. The earliest evidence we have of humans living on Jamaica, is 650 CE, which is just the 7th century, which is thousands of years after. The other islands. They've always wondered, why is it that, Jamaica, and Jamaica isn't the only one unique in that respect, because places like the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands were also settled, pretty late. So people talk about things like our southern location and the fact that we're more isolated than the other islands, which as an islander and as a Jamaican, I don't quite buy. But, we have to start with ideas until the ideas can be tested, yes. Which is a hypothesis, and then confirmed by evidence. Mm-hmm. And so far, we don't have the archaic populations that you find there in other parts of the region. What we do have is, we use the term Taino pretty loosely, and a lot of times we use it to represent the contact and pre-contact populations. But the Taino are really a product. They're Caribbean in that they were developed here, and they're descendants of ancestors that came into the region, thousands of years before. Jamaica, as I said, there still isn't evidence of the archaic. It's something that's quite a fascination for other people. For me personally, as an academic, I don't really care.
You don't care?
No, I don't care whether Jamaica fits in the box.
I see what you mean. Okay.
I don't care. I think we have been very narrow in our concepts of people, and we don't take into consideration diversity, and that people have different ways of expressing, but all these different expressions should be studied. And
to what extent does that affect or impact whether it's a funding around or the willingness to dig more, literally dig more for answers?
Well, okay. So firstly, I know excavation is an iconic symbol of archaeology, but archaeologists aren't the only ones who excavate. Geologists excavate, paleontologists, even the guy working on your house.
Yes, I thought of that. Yes.
Yes. And so it tends to be what we are associated, but it is not our only form of data collection. And to be honest, we only excavate as a last resort because it's destructive. And once you break ground, once you intrude into the soil, you can never, get that information back. So that is why documentation and people who are trained properly in excavations are needed. More and more, we are moving towards having non-intrusive techniques, use of things like drone, things like geophysics that can give you readings about what may be beneath the soil to guide our answers in terms of whether we should excavate or not. In terms of funding, to be honest, the Caribbean has always been viewed as the backwater of the Americas because we didn't have the levels of monumental architecture that you may find in the great city-states of the Maya, of the Azteca, and of course the Inca. Yes. But we still have cultures there that deserve to be studied. So to be honest, as an academic, it's kind of hard getting a job overseas if you specialize in Caribbean archaeology. Wow. But and there may not be, unless you have a university that is interested in working in the region. So you find the same set of universities interested. University like University of Florida, like Leiden out of the Netherlands, and so forth, based on their interest.
I see the challenge.
More and more academic projects are happening. So.
All right. Hold for me, Leslie. Let me just take a quick break.
Get more miles with the Ruby's Ultratech. Fuel the difference for peak performance and maximum savings. Drive more and save more. The time by Ruby's Ultratech is...
Now 10 minutes going up to 9 o'clock. Leslie, our conversation is cut short because we have a live link from the JCDC's Reggae Month, launch of Reggae Month church service. So I apologize for that. We wanted a longer discussion, but we're going to go until about 10:10 or thereabouts. And my apologies, even to our listeners. All right, so let's talk then about the original people. How far back have we gone, and who were the first people? Were the first people that we have identified on the island through archaeology?
So the first populations are associated with what is known as the Ostenoid group. Locally in Jamaica, they're referred to as redware because they're identified because they have a very bright red, beautifully glossed. It's not really gloss, it's really a burnish. Ceramics, very, very refined. Tend to use a lot of animal imagery, especially turtles. So they believe they came from Puerto Rico. That's a general consensus, but that is, is being challenged. Because in archaeology we have a thing called type site. Yes. So type site is the first place where you find a particular group of artifacts that you think is associated with a particular culture. So the type site was a site of stone in Puerto Rico. Okay. But again, the Jamaican situation is a little bit more complicated because the Jamaican culture actually predates what was supposed to be the Estonian. Right. So we believe that they peopled the island by the mid-7th century. There have been one or two dates that predate that, but we don't really have a lot. But by the very latest, the mid-7th century.
So the name of these people who the first people were seeing, the Ostenoid. How we spell that?
OSTOINOID.
The Austinoids.
Right.
All right.
And locally they're just referred to as redware, and we're the only ones that call them redware.
Yes.
Right, and they settled largely along the coast, so you do have evidence of them in parishes like Manchester, St. Elizabeth. Those are where the concentrations are. You have a few in Westmoreland and a few of them in St. Anne. And they were, of course, dependent on marine resources. There is evidence of horticulture. Okay, so there's a distinction between horticulture and agriculture. Agriculture is more monocrop, large scale. Horticulture tends to be like what we do now with our backyard. Where we have a mixture of oriental and edible, crops for our families and so forth. So there is evidence of cassava cultivation from that time, because cassava or yucca is the most important root crop for many of the cultures from the Amazon. So in going back in terms of the colonization of the region, the current understanding is that we have two areas where populations came from. The original first initial migrations from Central America, from the Yucatan across into Cuba, and then we also have another group that came from the Amazon into the Lesser Antilles, hopefully coming up and then into the Greater Antilles. But the bulk of it seems to be coming from South America, so that's why I mentioned the Amazon, because there's a relationship there. Later, we have a population that we think comes out of Western Hispaniola, Haiti, known as the Mayacans or the Mayacoids.
The Mayacans.
Or Mayacoids. MEILLACOID. They ended up dominating most of the islands. Previously it was thought that they actually displaced the Redware group by about the 10th century. I don't really believe that, but I'm just saying what the prevailing theory is.
Yeah. What do you believe?
I believe that they eventually interbred.
Okay.
Yeah. We have a way of just thinking that cultures just die so easily, but they don't. I mean, when contact happens, there's some sort of interchange, whether willingly or not.
Yes.
And that residues of the previous culture does remain, whether biological or cultural legacies. I don't believe that it is really possible for you to completely eradicate.
Right. And then one would think if not interbred, then obviously migrate, so you'd definitely be somewhere else, if not.
Right, because they would have been displaced. But I don't think they left. I think they interbred, and I think that is probably one of the reasons why the Jamaican culture is a little different from the others, because of that. But I will spend the rest of my life trying to prove that.
I'm supporting you with everything I have, apart from the funding, but I'm right there, 100%, because we need this information. I'm fascinated by it, to think. I mean, even the word Austinides, and that's the first one we know, and the Americans
yes, you can call them American. Nowadays they call it Mayacoid.
Okay, Mayacoid.
Yeah, they call it Mayacoid. So the White Mile site that most of you may know of in near Central Village in St. Catherine is the type site for that, and for the Mayacoid, and the type site for, meaning the first place it was found in Jamaica, this culture. So the first place that we found redware was in your parish, St. Anne, Little River. Unfortunately, Little River has been destroyed thanks to development, which is the reason why we lose most of our sites from development, whether housing, whether tourism related, whether infrastructure related. And then White Mile is a type site. Now, White Mile is a very fascinating site because it dates from about the 10th century right up to contact and after contact.
Okay. And by contact, you mean?
with the Europeans, with the Spanish Europeans. Jamaica, yes, it was claimed by the Spanish and called Santiago in 1494, but they didn't really settle on the island until the early 16th century, about 1509, 1510. They claimed the first major capital or town is in your parish also, Sevilla La Nueva, New Seville. Some just refer to it as Seville.
My parish is St. Mary now, so stop saying my parish is St.
You're not, where's Irene? Irene said,
we're broadcasting from St. Anne. But we just feel cute every time you say your parish, because as a St. Mary girl.
I was just thinking about where Irene FM is located. I know you're from St. Mary, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So have we found any of the Austinoids or the Mayacoids in St. Mary, or is just St. Anne?
Mostly Mayacoids.
Mayacoids, okay.
Yeah,
because I need a place to hitch my wagon,
No.
Yes.
Actually, St. Mary has a high concentration of Mayacoid sites, and they believe previous researchers, Philip Alsworth Jones, he has a book called Pre-Columbian Jamaica 2008. He taught me when I was a student at UWI. He believed that Anato Bay was probably a Taino chieftain, Gayagasa. That's where we get Wagwater from. It's a corruption of Wagwater. And he excavated at sites like Wentworth or Firefly, because some people know it as Firefly. Some people know it as Wentworth. Coloring, Greencastle, Newry. And a number of sites in that area form a cluster, and the density of it suggests that it's at the very least a district or a chiefdom. So in Taino governance, you have at the base level the village, the Yukayeke, and then you have a group of villages that form a part of a district, and then a larger group that form a part of the chiefdom, and then you have a number of chiefdoms in a particular region, and then you have the whole island. And there was no universal name for the indigenous people when the Taino came about. So the Taino is a pre-contact culture, and ideally based on the material expression we associated really with the 12th, 13th century. There's some indication of foundations before, maybe 10th and 11th, but it's really from 1200 AD or CE.
Okay, so they came later.
No, they didn't come. They originated.
They originated. All right, hang on there. Let me take a quick break.
You didn't know that Jamaica's unemployment rate is at its lowest ever? Yes, so more Jamaicans are working and can provide for themselves and their families. Your government is building Jamaica.
The time by the office of the Prime Minister is?
Now 9 o'clock. All right, so the Tainos originated here. In the region.
Yes, so they are a phenomenon of the Caribbean. They are Caribbean.
Okay.
They are Caribbean. Yes. So it is believed that the interactions between the Austinoid in Jamaica, the interactions between the Austinoid and the Mayacoid produced what became known as the Taino. But again, Jamaica is also complicated because, all right, so we always find ways of I don't want to say discrimination, but ranking things. So in some of in the past, the literature would have countries like the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico being the home of the Taino in terms of in its purest and truest sense, and then the other islands, would have a lesser recognition. So islands like Jamaica and Cuba used to be relegated as sub-Taino. This is before the 1950s, though. After that, with Irving Rout, who was an American archaeologist, he came up with the term classic Taino, where the DR and Puerto Rico serve as the classic, and then he relegated them based on region. So Western Taino is like Jamaica and Cuba, and then they have Eastern Taino, which includes like the Virgin Islands and Northern Lesser Antilles. And he developed some sort of criteria. It's not him alone, but in terms of the leading scholars at the time, some sort of criteria in terms of what demarks, Taino, such as population density, intensification of agriculture, certain types of material cultural expressions that you see in the pots, evidence of the Bati field where they played the ball game and had their aretos, which is, like their ceremony. Now, Jamaica has always been relegated to one of the less, and this is one of my big pet peeves as an archaeologist. I'm sick and tired of people ranking things, and the terminology is like native and primitive and lesser and more advanced. I mean, a society and a culture evolves in the context that they're living in based on what the technology is available there and the environment they're living in. So I don't buy that. But it is one day I still have to live in a white man's world. But
we're beginning to change that narrative, and even here this morning, I already see texts coming in. No, I'm just saying among us, the people. We the people listening to you. Because already I'm seeing quite a few texts coming into me. People are saying, but how come we don't this? We've heard about the Chinos, but not about the Austinites, not about the Mycoids. And how come that we're not even teaching this in school? Are we?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I have a big issue of being taught in schools. And as I said I identify as an indigenous woman because I wanted it to be known. Boy and Nanny. I'm not claiming biological affiliation. I don't know that, right? But you can't tell me how I can identify as somebody who's advocated.
Oh, no, I get it. Yes, no, I understand.
And somebody who's advocated for this culture for so many years. I mean, I have maroon ancestry. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I don't care. Whether I am biologically or not, and nobody can tell me otherwise. But the problem is that I have an issue with how indigenous groups are taught in the school. In terms of when you read the books, oh God, my boy is in second form, and oh God, when I read what the teachers give them, I cringe, and I can't do anything about it because the teachers will be facing us and tell me it's not the curriculum and that's not how they were taught. But I don't find us being on top of the current scholarship as we should be. It takes so long for change to come. It took decades for us to change from Arawak to just using the term Arawak to Taino,
It's just the other day. And even now, so let us go to that quickly for just a minute. Why for so many years, even up to when I left school, we were still saying the Arawaks were the first people, as opposed to Tainos, and then we know it's not even just the Tainos, we know we have two other peoples at least before that. But why did it take so long?
Well, I think it's okay. First, I wanted to say that the truth of the matter is we really don't know what the people call themselves. I think they call themselves based on their island, right? Okay, so just like how we call ourselves Jamaican and our sisters and brothers in Cuba, they're Cubans and so forth. They had names for their island. So I'm sure you've come across the term Yamaye.
Yes, especially in your book. Once again, get the book, The Earliest Inhabitants, The Dynamics of the Jamaican Time.
Right.
Yes.
Which is one of the earliest recordings in reference to Jamaica. Yes. A lot of people keep saying Examaica. Okay, one, there's no X. X is not a word, a letter that you would see in the Taino alphabet. All these cultures have languages. All these languages are a part of language family trees. When they get in contact with other cultures, there may be changes and influences on them. So when you say Examaica, that's really a Spanish version of the Taino that we are pushing and saying is indigenous, and it's not correct. And this is why
so the word that is closest in terms of the earliest recordings of what might possibly be the name of this island would be Yamae.
Yes. That is so. So if you notice, we have a Taino village, Yukayeke, or Guanai, Yamae, Guanai. The hummingbird people, Cacique, Nibonrish, Taiman, or Brother Kalan.
Kalan.
They use Yamaye. And when you think about the name Jamaica, depending on the language and the time, the prefix our country's name changes, it can be seen as X or H, I, Y. I mean, J is the most common one, right? I've even just seen Jamaica referred with, and it's starting with Jamaica, with just A, depending on the maps you use, and the suffix, the ka can change, and ka in indigenous language means location of. So it just basically tells you it's the place of which people would precede the ka. And then in French, it's ko and things. So, but the root amo is actually a Taino word. Amo means water, body of water, river. So I mean, when you think of land of wood and water, land abounding with springs, when you think about especially the central to eastern section of the island where there is so many riverine resources, I can get why they ended up with that name, you know. But these are not things that are properly taught. But to go back to the Arawak Taino confusion, which is what I think you're asking about. All right, so in the ethno-historical account, there are about 2 incidences where, with contact with the Spanish, the indigenous individual referred to themselves as Tainon or El Taino, right? And that has been taken to be like a situation where they're identifying themselves in terms of who they are. So that is how that Taino word came about. In the other islands, like in places like Haiti and in the Spanish islands, they had been referring to the population of the Greater Antilles, indigenous population of the Greater Antilles, as Taino for almost a century before. We in the Anglophone Caribbean starting adapting it. You can see books from the early 20th century. There's a famous one, Seven Leuven, the Taino culture of the West Indies. I think it's about 1935, and so that word has been around from before, and that word has been associated with the indigenous culture, particularly of the Greater Antilles. I don't know how the confusion with Arawak started, because the people who they're referring to as Arawak actually don't call themselves Arawak. They're referring to a culture that is from the northern South America, Amazon area, and they call themselves Locono, and their language Loco. And one of the things and that's why I said we're not doing enough in terms of this post-colonial, post-modernist era, and in terms of engendering, marginalized cultures and so forth, because a lot of cultures are being called by names that they are find offensive, and they also don't refer to themselves as. So
I'm so sorry that because we're completely out of time. We really did schedule this interview to go all the way up to 9:30, but we do have the church service to link into, and I really apologize to you. I give you 30 seconds though, because you're standing by for a sponsored link. Just to wrap this, and then I'll invite you to come back and we'll finish this conversation on Jamaica's ancient archaeology.
Anytime. Well, thank you for having me, and I hope that your audience are open and willing to do their own research, of course, with credible sources.
Yes.
That's the problem. We need credible. You need to use credible sources.
In the meantime, let us start with the book you edited, The Earliest Inhabitant, The Dynamics of the Jamaican Taino. There's so much there, edited by Leslie Gale Atkinson. And where is it available? At the UE bookshop, I'm sure.
It's associated with the UE, with UE Press. Yes. And the places that their books are distributed at. But there's also my children book, which you promoted when
Yes. Quickly give us a topic, because I'm getting all kinds of eyes.
Right.
Yes.
Boy and Anya, Taino Girl's First Adventure. It has a preface that sets the context of where we are with Taino, and it's a nice story. And it's good for you. Have the children read while you read the big book.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Leslie. Definitely I'll call you and we'll reschedule a continuation of this conversation. It's 24 now after 9 o'clock, and a programming note on a Sunday, that's next Sunday, February 9. we'll be having a very special guest in studio. So once again, Sunday, February 9, my very special guest in studio will be Minister of Constitutional Affairs, Minister Marlene Malahoo Fort. She'll be live in the studio. Our topic, Jamaica's journey to becoming a republic and related matters. That's Jamaica's journey to becoming a republic and related matters. That's Sunday, February 9, live on IRI FM, in the studios of IRI FM. Minister of Constitutional Affairs, Marlene Malahoo Fort, will be joining me to have that discussion and to take your telephone calls. So set your questions ready, have them down, write them down. We'll be opening the phone lines from 7 a.m. all the way to 10 a.m. as Minister Malahoo Fort, takes your question next week, Sunday.
Reuniting the African family for development.
You know, I don't understand some people. Listen, not even a minute and I see a text coming. Are you serious? So let me just say it in a way as if it's a promo, right? Sunday, February 9, Minister Marlene Malahoo Fort will be live in the studio with me to take your telephone calls. It's all confirmed. It's all done. Thank you to my nephew, Abka Fitzhenley. It's all done, and she'll be live with me in studio, okay? And as I said to Abka, make sure you come. So Marlene Malahoo Fort, live in studio as we look at, and as part of Black History Month programming, and also because there's just so much happening, so much discussion taking place around constitutional reform, getting rid of the monarchy as head of state, and all of that. And we've got questions. So she has agreed to come in studio, sit down with us as we open the phone lines and take your telephone calls on constitutional reform and related matters. 26 after 9 o'clock, just before I go to my 9:35 guest, we have been talking about our mentor, our sister, our friend, our teacher, Nana Velma Pollard, who has transcended, and it's been a rough morning just getting through the morning, because this is at the top of my mind, and all that's in my mind is the last time we were together and we sat together and we were talking. And I remember when she said goodbye, when she was leaving, and we said goodbye and she left, and the only thing that's coming at me is I didn't know that was the last time I would have seen her. Looking forward to seeing her again at Black Space when we go back. That's the kind of thing that was in my mind, you know. But we have a message from Professor Vereen Shepherd. She says, I hail Velma for the work she did, the people she influenced, and the literary legacy she has left behind, and express my sympathy on her passing. Condolences to Nana Erna Brodba. That's from Professor Vereen Shepherd. Also from Dr. Amina Blackwood Meeks. She says, Untukuma, the Storytelling Foundation, honors the life and legacy of Velma Pollard, a literary griot who has journeyed with us since 1998, contributing as a panelist to our many discussions, camping out with us as we journeyed through Jamaica's countryside, attending our lunch hour presentations, and offering many words of encouragement and advice. Amina, as the tears flowing over my eyes, I can hardly read a thing. We highly regard Velma Pollard as a weaver of stories, a keeper of memory, and a guardian of our Caribbean voice, who reminded us that our stories are not just worth telling, but they must be told. Our mission at Ntukuma is to demonstrate that storytelling is a foundation of our culture, as well as an important documentation of our contribution to world civilization. Velma Pollard embodied this philosophy. Through her, we heightened our understanding that our speech and our traditions are rich with meaning. We salute her for affirming that the way we tell our stories is as important as the stories themselves. We are inspired by Velma's work as an explorer of ideas on the issues of nationhood and identity. Her words live on in us, guiding us like the Anansi stories, which she also documented, to embrace how critical it is that we use our stories to preserve our past and construct our future. Rest in power, Velma Pollard. Your voice remains. Your stories endure. Our Nana Velma Pollard has transcended, and we are coming to terms with that this morning. Take a quick break. All right, all roads lead to the Bob Marley Museum on February 6th. IRFM is there from morning till night. As usual, we set it so and we're not changing it. All right, we're going to go to the phone lines now to speak to my next very special guest, Tristan Williams, founder and principal consultant of 6 Degrees, a UK-based company specializing in high-performance automotive innovation, composite manufacturing, and business development. He's also the chief commercial officer at Arash Motor Company, known for its cutting-edge hypercars and advanced automotive engineering, including projects. He has over a decade of experience in automotive, motorsport, and aerospace. Tristan has worked with leading brands on bespoke engineering solutions, advanced composites, and AI-driven vehicle technologies. He is a key voice in the intersection of AI technology and global markets, providing insights into how innovations like DeepSeek's rise impact industries, stock markets, and Western tech giants. And just full disclosure, he's also my nephew. Good morning, Tristan Williams. How are you doing? All right, so if we just do this again, Antoinette, Tristan, I'm not hearing you. You're not on the board, and I know you'll understand that. You're not on the console, and that is because I think we just need to get you plugged in properly. So let me just get our telephone operator back in the studio, and we get you connected properly. Hold for me, Tristan. No, still don't have him. Why don't we have him on the board here? Let's take him off hands-free. All right, that should be better. He's off hands-free. Let me hear you now, Tris.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's much better. Thank you so much. So we had you on hands-free. All right. So I just said full disclosure, you're my nephew. So we're going to have a good little chat about so many of these new technologies coming up, Tristan. Last time we spoke, it was about Lewis Hamilton. And you remember how disappointed we were, what we expected Hamilton. When the race was stolen from him, because we still maintain that, don't we?
Yes.
And now he's on to Ferrari, and I'm sure we'll talk about that another time. But you're thinking on his move to Ferrari.
I think it's amazing. I think it's two legends joining forces, so it's amazing to see. I guess this is going to be the last team that he races for. So I think it's a really beautiful sort of culmination of legends coming together to achieve greatness. So yeah, I think a lot of people are excited. The Tifosi seem excited. So hopefully he can bring home that 8th at Ferrari and see what they can do.
All of a sudden we're all Tifosi.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay, so to move to another area, just to tap into your expertise. So last week interestingly enough, we broke the news here on the island in Jamaica about China's DeepSeek AI technology, which has been making waves in the tech world. And we're seeing how the markets responded around the world generally. So could you break this down for me? Walk us through the key features and capabilities of DeepSeek's AI model. What is it? How does it compare to other models in the industry?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. So DeepSeek, basically what they've done. So it's obviously DeepSeek is a Chinese AI startup, and initially they a lot of people may not have heard of them back in 2024 around Christmas time with their V3 model. But that's kind of sort of when people started sort of hearing a buzz about them. And obviously now it's kind of made this resurgence with their latest model that they've released. And basically the way that DeepSeek have trained their model is they've, instead of starting from the ground up, they've trained their model using bits and pieces, especially using ChatGPT as part of the basis of their model, or at least the parts of ChatGPT that are readily available to them. So instead of simply saying, okay, we're going to invest all of this money to build from the ground up this new AI model with no R&D, or with our own R&D without using anything else that's currently out there. They said, what's already out there? What can we build on? And how can we basically be more efficient with the way that we basically build our AI model?
So why did to back up a bit, why did they have this difficulty in terms of, so they had to be using bits and pieces? What's the background to that? Why did they have to do that?
So basically, in terms, especially if we're talking about the West and the US market, one of the main things has been the US basically predicting that, you know, we're about 3 years ahead or so of China when it comes to AI development. And they were basically banking on this, you know, margin of them being at the forefront. And also it's a thing where especially the US and the West and its allies have been very specific with how they've not just distanced themselves from China, but in terms of trying to make sure that there isn't certain data sharing or technology sharing, especially when it comes to developing AI between the West and China. So for them, this DeepSeek AI was really born out of necessity, like looking at the market.
The mother of invention, literally.
Yes, exactly. And they're trying to find out how, because China and the Chinese companies were put in such a specific position to where they've basically been cut out of the conversation in terms of, you know, the way that the US and Western companies might have access to certain data. They're trying to discover how, well, they're basically being forced to be even more innovative in a sense than the US based companies. They don't just have these billions that they want to throw at the problem. They're like, okay, these guys are doing this over here. We're in the situation where we don't really have access to the same information that they have. What can we do to get a head start on what they're doing? And basically they just broke all of the scholars and people that are big in the tech space, their position on what they believe the distance was going to be in terms of that 3 years like gap of innovation that the West believed that they were ahead of China. They've just blown out of the water, and now they're in a position where, because of the innovation and the creativity that Chinese AI companies like DeepSeek are making, DeepSeek have basically put themselves in a position to where their AI is actually not just significantly cheaper to build, but it's also in many instances more powerful than the equivalent rivals. And I think that's a lot of what the market disruption has been about.
And we come back to the market disruption because this AI model is open source, and this is quite unique in the industry. Explain what that means for our listeners and how unique this is.
Yeah, no, this is very, very unique, especially given the scale and scope of DeepSeek's competitors by performance. So when I say competitors, I don't mean direct competitors in terms of how much money DeepSeek have put in, because according to their claims, the amount of money, I think it's something like 4-5 million.
Between 5 and 6 million. Yeah.
Right, that they've put into investment. So the open source situation basically means that you, I, whoever the case might be, we actually have access to the open source code that the AI is actually built on. So we could actually, any one of us can run OpenAI directly on our own hardware, on our own system. So that means that it doesn't have to talk to the internet to work. It can work directly on your hardware. Which for many people and companies that, especially in the West, that want to utilize OpenAI, is actually probably what makes OpenAI even something that they might want to get into, or their company policy would even allow them to get into, because OpenAI, their servers are based in China. So if they weren't open source, that would mean that, let's say they work similar to OpenAI or Claude, or all of these different top level Western AI models. Though when you send a query into those models, it goes from your hardware and it travels over the internet into their servers, into their data centers, and at that point the query gets answered and then it returns to you from whichever server facility, probably somewhere based in the US, and then it will come back, and the answer will come back to you. Now, most people, especially in the West, and most companies in the West, probably wouldn't like the idea that if they wanted to share some information or they were asking a question, that question first had to go to China to get answered, and then come all the way back. And people sometimes get misconstrued with why this is a particular issue. Most people just think, oh, it's because it's a Chinese company with Chinese servers and we don't like China. It's not necessarily that cut and dry. Basically, the main issue is that the laws surrounding privacy and client privacy and things of that nature, user privacy, is very different in China. So if the Chinese government want to access that information for any reason, Chinese companies don't necessarily have the same protections to say, no, you can't access this. And that's really the primary distinction between, having GDPR and these different laws and things in the Western world, where we do have those protections. But yeah, so the main core, just to kind of give a rounded conclusion of what the open source situation is just that they've made their code for the platform, for the AI model, openly available. So you can see the code, you can access the code, you can look at the code, and you can run that code directly on your own hardware without having to ping an external source via the internet to get the answer.
So you're thinking on why it affected the market in the way it did, and also to look at where it is now, because last time I looked, it was the number one app in the Google Play Store, wherever it is. Why did we have this massive disruption in terms of how the market crashed, and do you see Nvidia and stocks like that rebounding from this? It's talking about billions of dollars.
Yeah, it's made a major shift in the market disruption. As you rightly said, it shot to the top of the iOS store, the App Store in the US, and yeah, that was something, and surpassing ChatGPT for the highest rated free app. And I would say that I think one of the main factors for the disruption, of course, is what's been reported in terms of how little investment they needed to put into the app. But then it's the fact of how efficient the app is, like how efficient the AI is, and not just the app, but the actual AI model, how efficient the AI model actually is, and the fact that so little R&D spend in terms of monetary spend has been put into the app, into the AI model, and has yielded such significant performance results. Because of this, it shocked the market in a way where the market doesn't like to be surprised. It doesn't like to be blindsided. And due to the enormous amount of resources, let's say, that, an open AI requires, the efficiency basically raised concerns about the heavy AI investments by US tech companies. And obviously, everyone that's commercially minded, you don't want to throw money away in any instance.
Yeah, and especially on the back of that announcement, because it came right on the back of the announcement of Stargate, and Stargate being like $1 billion investment, on the back of that. Wow, that's quite something. For us as African people, Black people across the world, where should we be taking an example from China? What's your thoughts on what especially young Black people are supposed to be doing now within this current environment of the convergence of digital technologies and AI in particular?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think it's a wake-up call for anyone that I would say is passionate about technology, that is passionate about AI, that believes that there's more to be achieved, that just because you see big tech corporations accomplishing these, impeccable milestones, that there isn't room in the tech space. There's always room if you're willing to make a disruption. There's always a way if you're willing to be innovative and creative behind the ways that you're looking to achieve something. And as me and you know, whether it's sports and different things, sometimes throwing money at a problem doesn't always make the best result in every situation. Sometimes it's the creativity, the innovation, and the way you go about problem solving that really makes the difference. So I would say, to young black people, to Black tech companies and businesses that are growing, emerging, that are thriving, I would say keep on innovating, keep on being creative, look for various avenues and ways where you can do something different, where you can perhaps utilize something that's already there to bring it to another level. Because sometimes, the questions are always, I always say, between scientists and engineers and people, you ask an engineer and a scientist a question and they may give you a deep and complex answer because they're so used to answering complex questions. But really, sometimes the simplest answer is oftentimes the right one.
It is true.
Right.
Tell our engineer at IRFM. Good morning, Mr. Wisdom. We always get complex answers. Thank you so much, Tristan. Really appreciate the work and really appreciate that you took the time out to help us to understand this better. We're going to be tapping in with you from time to time as we come face to face with this new technology, the convergence of the digital technologies as African people. Thank you so much, my nephew.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right. Okay, Tristan Wilson there. A little bit about the DeepSeek. I'm sure that we're all interested in this to some extent. And there you go. Let me do this. An interesting thing, I don't want to leave without mentioning this, because I saw two things I saw that caught my attention. One I posted to Facebook. But the Financial Times is reporting that there is a rush on gold, and that there's a shortage of gold in the UK, and that there's a stockpiling of gold in New York. This is interesting. It's a Financial Times. Sometimes they hide information in these papers. They think we're not reading them and we're not seeing them. But it says a surge in gold shipments to the U.S. has led to a shortage of bullion in London as traders amass a $82 billion stockpile in New York over fears of Trump administration tariffs. The way to withdraw bullion stored in the Bank of England's vaults has risen from a few days to between 4 and 8 weeks, according to people familiar with the process, as a central bank struggles to keep up with the demand. People can't get their hands on gold because so much has been shipped to New York and the rest is stuck in the queue, said one industry executive. Liquidity in the London market has been diminished. Now, let us pay some attention to this. They know what they're doing. Why is there a shortage of gold? It fits in with everything we are saying. Read the technocracy. Technocracy demands that there should be a rush on gold, so this is why it caught my eyes. There's also another story that caught my eyes. Okay, just trying to find that, but it's another financial story, and I think the two are connected in a very serious way. So let me see if I can put my hand on that. But just to say, we're paying attention, and we really should. There's a red flag alert from the Lemkin Institute, red flag alert for genocide in the United States from Lemkin Institute. That is not connected, but I just thought I'd say that. All right, so hedge funds are betting millions, and this is hedge funds now we're talking about. Hedge funds are betting billions on market crash in America. So it's an interesting thing that's happening. Hedge funds have bet billions of dollars against Donald Trump's America amid fears of a market crash. Data from Goldman Sachs show there has been a surge in short bets against U.S. stocks, meaning traders will make money when they fall in value, in a sign of growing concerns about the market. So traders will make money when they fall in value. In January, investors have placed 10 times more bets on U.S. stocks falling than equivalent bets that shares in leading American companies would rise. This is according to the investment bank. It suggests many traders are sitting on huge profits from the chaos earlier this week when shares in big tech stocks slumped following a panic over the success of rival Chinese AI DeepSeek. The increase in short bets marks a major turnaround in sentiment from November, when hedge funds piled into long bets on U.S. stocks, predicting that they would rise. It is all part of the bigger picture of technocracy and its evil twin, transhumanism. So pay attention, it's all connected. We'll come back and talk about some of this later. But if there's a rush on gold, that should tell you something. We should be rushing gold to and silver and farming. Biggie, you're good though with the gold and the silver and thing.
Gold, silver and gold I have
Is it silver and gold shall perish away?
Silver and gold I have none.
You have none, but a good education will never decay. Right, and that them teach you. You see that's something they do. All right, and then them program the education in such a way so that we don't want no silver nor no gold. But we're in the time, food security, water security, security for our body, security for our farm, security for our family, a security time. As Brother Ajam will always say, sometimes you have to move for something and just hold something for sure that you can defend something. There you go. 2 minutes going up to 10 o'clock and we're saying goodbye. Thank you so much for listening in, for sharing, for being part of the program as usual. Really appreciate your feedback along the way. We see you on Facebook, we see you on the text, we see you on all the texts, as a matter of fact, the private and the public and otherwise. We see you in all the social media spaces. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Remember our theme, we are on our own, reshaping the future of Africa and the Caribbean for our children. Making way now for the Biggie inside of the Sunday Sunshine. Mr. Biggie, do you have any thoughts on Spice? The church,
no,
because we're handing over to you now.
I'm not.
Yeah. You're not.
I'm not familiar with all the.
Oh, okay,
angles,
okay.
But I know of it.
You know of it.
I know of it. I know
okay.
That, her school tour was being
cancelled. Yes.
And the church community, especially the churches that are directly affiliated with schools,
right?
They have been very vocal about
her being on that.
Her performing for the children.
Either performing or her having a school tours of their school, because it's not just performing. When they go,
right,
they don't just perform. But Biggie, I want to remind you of something. Do you remember a few years ago you were an integral part of it, because we couldn't do it if people like yourself didn't support it, a project here at IRFM called Write It and Write It, making literacy IRE. It was WRITE and RIGHT.
And it was from that project that the right stuff came, which was the name of my program.
Oh, I didn't even realize.
Yeah, that was exactly
right. So that project was because teachers were saying to us what the situation was like in schools, and the extent to which the situation was deteriorating. And they felt, and especially Paulette Ferreira, she was the one who came with this to us to say they felt that we could partner with the schools and do something to help to correct the situation, which is, we reached out immediately, first of all, to you and other presenters here. You are one of the main ones here at IRFM on that, to help us to guide that process. And then the next thing was to reach out to the artists. And that was for a reason, because once again the teachers were saying to us, we feel that we can get through to the most troublesome ones through music, through dancehall, through reggae,
and through influence.
And so we went for that. And I thought about that when I heard what Spice was planning to do. And maybe it's what's in a name. Maybe it's what's in a name. That's what I thought. Because I honestly think somebody like her, in other words, let's not fool ourselves. What's happening in the schools? Not pretty. The schools are hiding it. The Ministry of Education is hiding it. And so that unless a teacher comes to you and say, we are scared. Listen, I've had a teacher say to me, my school is a war house. Let me just say it.
Yeah.
I've had teachers saying to me, my school is literally housing gangs. I've had teachers say to me, aren't you concerned about what's happening? Why are you not talking more about what's happening in the schools? Because the situation is really bad. Who's going to reach these children? Who's going to reach these children?
It has to be somebody of influence, somebody that they will listen to.
That's what I'm thinking.
And who
That's
better
what I'm
than
thinking.
who better than persons who they have respect for, like
that's what I'm thinking.
The artists. And so.
That's what I'm thinking. There are many ways to look at it, and I know why there was a knee-jerk reaction from the church. I know why the first reaction is, no, not you. But if not you, who?
There you go.
Because the situation that exists in the schools require a Spice to come and say, listen to me, I have a job. My job is an artist. And we put that one side there, so. But let me talk to you now as a mother, a sister, somebody who has been through the ringer. Let me tell you about my experience and how me fight through for Meki. And point it to another way. I think she can do it. I think she can do it, Big A.
I have no doubt that she can. I have no doubt that she can.
I know it's on the way now.
But you see, and the reality of this, Kabu, is that we have been using the conventional methods over and over and over, and it not work.
That's right.
So it is time now, it is
try another way.
To try another way.
Sit down and have a discussion with her then and say, listen, we know A, B, and C. Tell us what you're thinking. But not just come out and start throw all kinds of... I think that... Or make we rework the tour then. If you perform, come the way, make we rework the tour. We found, Big A, and you did it, so we found that when we call in the DJs and we call in the artists, that we had boys, especially young boys, who couldn't read, who were writing poetry. Why them writing poetry? They might write poetry, put it on a rhythm. How did they get to write poetry? They might have to read that for write it.
I'm going to tell you an example that I remember to this day, and it is one of the stories that I've been told that I'll never forget.
Yes.
A teacher at the Brownstone High, and I had a conversation a few years ago. And she said to me, no, actually I saw, she was a friend of mine, and I actually saw her coming from all dressed up. So I was driving her, and I said, dress up I come from, and she says, I'm coming from a graduation. I said, okay. I said, who graduated? And then she began to tell me the story. She says, a few years ago, there was this failing student at the Brownstone High in, up in my community, right? That's where I come from. And she says, he was on the verge of being expelled. She tried everything in the book, right? Counseling, extra lessons, everything, and just not improving. She sent for him parents, she do everything. He was just not interested. Feeling everything, and then there was on the verge of throwing him out. But teachers and I guess parents have a way of loving the most untoward picnic. The worse the picnic is, the more they love you.
Something in it.
They're
trying to loving them to betterness.
Right. And she said she had a special affection for this kid, and he is now on the verge of being thrown out. And she had a conversation with him, and she says, you're going out because there, for some reason, you're not improving, and you're not, and then him want to go to. And she had tell me, and she says to him, Busy Signal would be very disappointed in you. And
yes,
remember now, he's not even interested in music,
Right.
She said to him, because Busy Signal went to Brownstone High.
Right. Oh, he did?
Yeah, he did. She said to him, Busy Signal will be very disappointed in you. And him eyes pop. And him say, why you said that, miss? And she said to him, you see that seat there why you sit on it now? Busy Signal used to sit on it now.
Goodness me.
And the long and short of that story is that she coming from him graduation at UTech.
You lie.
She coming, when I saw she was coming from his graduation, this kid,
I hear you,
got a degree in engineering because of that one sentence.
Yes. No. And
so when you're talking about influence,
yes,
it is stories like this that underscore what I'm talking about.
We're too judgmental because, you see, the music aside, a lot of the music has permeated every corner of Jamaica, and the young people have tapped into the music. And influence is a word you're using, and I'm going with it. Spice, can do it. I think she has a heart to do it, and I think she has the means to do it. Well, I'd like to say something to Spice, We had a thing here, right? Are you a friend to Sotelhasa, we say? We had a thing here called Write It and Write It, Making Literacy Irie.
Yeah, man.
Would I like to bring back that thing here if I even write just another space?
Right.
You understand? I think, Spice, talk to us at Irie, because I honestly believe that you can make a difference in the schools. And let me tell you what the problem is. This thing about what them say, which animal them say a bird have them head in the sun and then bottom exposed. This is what is happening in Jamaica.
Ostrich.
We are pretend like say we don't know what going on in the school them. How we pretend like we don't know? We know what's happening in the schools. What's happening in the schools would frighten any of us. We understand it, we know it. I'm going to tell you another thing that we know. We're seeing the numbers of students who are leaving high school and can't read. We're seeing what's happening with our boys. You did a whole thing on our boys the other day. Right? So we're seeing that. And as Big A said before, we try everything. And if everything don't work, then make us see if this can work. And let's do it together then. Call Spice and work out a proper way to do it. Since fair way not proper. Just as I say.
Yeah, it is. So influence is an important part of it.
Maybe if Spice did white and have flowing here, it don't matter what she say.
That's true.
So a part of that are racism too, and classism too, and colorism.
But we have been trained to accept that over the years.
You think you remember the white man that was here taking care of our children? Remember he was a criminal that escaped and come to Jamaica hideout and in charge of the children. You know, remember that something happened last year or 2 years ago?
No, but I won't disbelieve it.
Yeah, it was in the news. It's because he was white. He was heading up a children's organization.
Oh yes, yeah, I remember it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Spice couldn't do that. Spice would not have been allowed to do that.
She couldn't get in.
But this man was a criminal. Look here, I'm going to leave the gay program to you.
We have been trained.
Yeah, according to Malcolm X, we've been bamboozled.
Right, it is.
Anyway, Mr. Big A, tell Spice, because you're your sister. Right. Tell her I was a check way.
I know she has heard. I can tell you that.
All right.
She has heard.
Okay.
She has heard. I just want to remind you too that remember that the right stuff was the program that started. Played a lot of writing stuff. The poetry.
Yes.
The poetry.
Exactly.
Poetry. The dub poetry and
you had the children.
Literary work was exposed.
Coming from the children was exposed in your program.
Yeah, man. That was how the right stuff came.
Yes, and those boys were modeling you. None of them at the end of the day wanted to be Big A. These boys were not reading before, they were not writing before, but they were able to write poetry and have it performed and read on air.
The story of Busy Signal will just tell you everything.
Look here, man.
About influence.
Thank you, Big A, for